The question started as a light-hearted inquiry about unusual jobs. Ellen DeGeneres was working through her studio audience during the What Do You Do segment, chatting with people about their careers and finding humor in the everyday work that keeps society running. She'd already talked to a professional dog walker who spoke 3 languages to accommodate international clients and a woman who designed costumes for zoo animals. But when she noticed a young man in row 9 who seemed to be carrying a violin case, she had no idea that the next few minutes would reveal one of the most inspiring stories of resilience, creativity, and human connection she'd ever heard. "You, sir, with the violin case," Ellen called out, pointing to a man who appeared to be in his late 20s. "Are you a musician?" The man looked up with a bright smile that immediately caught Ellen's attention. There was something about his energy, vibrant and positive, despite the fact that he was sitting in a wheelchair. He had warm brown eyes, meticulously groomed dark hair, and the kind of presence that suggested he was comfortable being the center of attention. "Yes, ma'am, I am," he replied, his voice carrying a confidence that filled the studio. "My name is Kevin Martinez, and I play violin." "Kevin, how long have you been playing?" "Since I was 6 years old. That's 23 years now." Ellen walked closer to his row, intrigued by something in his demeanor. "Are you a professional musician? Do you play with an orchestra?" Kevin's smile didn't fade, but Ellen caught a flicker of something more complex in his expression. "You could say I have my own kind of orchestra." "What kind of orchestra?" "I play in the subway stations here in LA. Union Station, Hollywood and Vine, downtown. My concert hall is underground, and my audience changes every few minutes." The studio audience made appreciative sounds, but Ellen sensed there was more to this story. "Kevin, how long have you been a subway musician?" "About 4 years now," Kevin said, "but it's not what you might think. I'm not just playing for tips." Ellen tilted her head. "What do you mean?" Kevin's expression became more serious, more passionate. "I play for people who need music but don't know it yet. Commuters who are stressed, workers who are exhausted, travelers who are lonely. I watch their faces and I play what they need to hear." The studio quieted as people began to understand that Kevin was describing something deeper than busking. "You play different music for different people?" "Exactly. If I see someone who looks anxious, I might play something calming, like Bach. If someone seems sad, maybe a gentle melody that acknowledges their pain but offers hope. If a parent is struggling with kids, I might play something playful that makes the children smile." Ellen felt goosebumps rising on her arms. "Kevin, that's incredible. How do you know what people need?" "You learn to read people when you perform on the street. Body language, facial expressions, the way they walk. Music is a universal language, but you have to speak the right dialect for each person." Ellen made a decision that would transform this casual conversation into something much more profound. "Kevin, would you come down here and tell us more about this?" Kevin maneuvered his wheelchair down to the stage area with practiced ease. Ellen noticed how smoothly he moved, how comfortable he seemed in his chair, and how his violin case never left his side. Once they were seated in the interview area, Ellen asked the question that would open up Kevin's remarkable story. "Kevin, I have to ask, how long have you been in a wheelchair?" "Since I was 18, Kevin answered without hesitation. "Car accident during my freshman year at Juilliard." The studio fell silent. Ellen felt her heart skip a beat. "You were at Juilliard?" "Full scholarship," Kevin nodded. "I was studying classical violin performance, had dreams of playing with the New York Philharmonic, maybe the LA Phil, all the usual dreams that young violinists have." Ellen leaned forward. "What happened after the accident?" Kevin's expression remained remarkably positive. "Well, my legs stopped working, but my hands didn't. My fingers still worked, my arms still worked. The music was still there." "Did you finish at Juilliard?" "I tried to go back, but—" Kevin paused, choosing his words carefully. "Let's just say that the classical music world has very specific ideas about what a professional musician should look like. Wheelchair accessibility was one issue, but the bigger problem was perception." Ellen felt anger building in her chest. "You mean they discriminated against you because of your disability?" "Not officially," Kevin said diplomatically. "But when you show up to auditions and the first thing people notice is your wheelchair instead of your playing, you start to understand that maybe you need to find a different path. So you started playing in subway stations." Kevin's smile returned. "Best decision I ever made. In the subway, nobody cares what I look like or how I sit. They only care about how the music makes them feel." Ellen stood up and walked to her desk, returning with a folder that her producers had somehow managed to compile during their conversation. "Kevin, While we've been talking, my team has been making some calls. Do you know that you're famous? Kevin looked confused. Famous? Ellen opened the folder. We found hundreds of social media posts about a violinist who plays in the LA subway system. People call you the Angel of Union Station and the Subway Healer. Kevin stared at Ellen in amazement. Ellen began reading from printed posts. This one says, I was having the worst day of my life, contemplating some very dark thoughts, when I heard this incredible violin music echoing through Union Station. I followed the sound and found this man in a wheelchair playing the most beautiful, hopeful melody I'd ever heard. I stood there and cried, and when I walked away I felt like I could keep going. She flipped to another page. This post says, my daughter has autism and usually has meltdowns on the subway. But there's this violinist who plays at Hollywood and Vine, who somehow always seems to know exactly what music will calm her down. He's like a musical therapist. Kevin was listening with tears in his eyes. Ellen continued, and this one, I'm a nurse who works night shifts. Every morning when I get off work exhausted and emotionally drained, there's this violinist at downtown station who plays these gentle, healing melodies that somehow restore my soul before I go home. Ellen set down the papers and looked at Kevin. Kevin, people don't just appreciate your music. They say you're saving their lives. Kevin wiped his eyes. I had no idea people were posting about it. I just play what feels right in the moment. Kevin, how many hours a day do you spend playing in the subway? 6 to 8 hours. I rotate between 3 stations, so I don't wear out my welcome anywhere. Ellen felt her amazement growing. 6 to 8 hours a day for 4 years. Kevin, do you have any idea how many people you've performed for? Kevin thought about it. Thousands, probably. Maybe tens of thousands. The subway is busy. And you choose music specifically for what you think each person needs. As much as I can, sometimes I'll see someone and just know what they need to hear. A business executive having a phone argument might need something that reminds him to slow down. A teenager who looks lost might need something that tells her she's not alone. Ellen stood up again. Kevin, I want you to meet someone. From the wings of the stage walked a distinguished-looking man in his 60s wearing a dark suit and carrying himself with obvious authority. Kevin, this is Maestro David Chen, the conductor of the Los Angeles Philharmonic. Kevin's mouth fell open. Maestro Chen? I know your work. I've studied your recordings. Maestro Chen sat down beside Kevin and Ellen. Kevin, I've been hearing about you for months. Musicians in my orchestra live all over the city, and several of them have encountered you in the subway. They've been telling me about this remarkable violinist who plays with such emotion and insight. Kevin looked stunned. 3 weeks ago I decided to hear you myself, Maestro Chen continued. I took the metro to Union Station specifically to find you. Kevin, what I heard was extraordinary. Not just technically excellent playing, but music that was alive, responsive, connected to the people around you. Ellen watched this conversation with growing excitement. Kevin, Maestro Chen said, how would you feel about auditioning for the LA Phil? Kevin stared at the conductor. But, my wheelchair. Our concert hall is fully accessible and frankly, your disability is irrelevant to your musical ability. What matters is that you're one of the most intuitive musicians I've ever encountered. Ellen felt tears building in her eyes. Kevin, are you telling me that playing in the subway for 4 years led to an audition with the LA Philharmonic? It's more than an audition, Maestro Chen clarified. If Kevin is interested, I'd like to offer him a position as our community outreach musician. He would perform with the orchestra, but he would also continue his subway work as part of our public engagement program. Kevin looked like he might faint. You want me to keep playing in the subway? Kevin, what you've been doing is exactly what classical music needs more of. Connection with real people in real situations. You've been doing community outreach better than any formal program we've ever had. Ellen couldn't contain her excitement. Kevin, do you understand what's happening? You didn't lose your orchestra career because of your accident. You found a better one. But Maestro Chen had more to say. Kevin, there's something else. We want you to help us create a new program called Music Where You Are. The idea is to bring classical musicians to unexpected places, hospitals, homeless shelters, senior centers, anywhere people might need music but can't come to a concert hall. Kevin's eyes widened. You want to create more subway musicians? We want to create more musicians like you, ones who understand that music isn't just performance, it's service. Ellen turned to address the studio audience. Ladies and gentlemen, what we're witnessing is incredible. Kevin thought his accident ended his dream of being a professional musician. Instead, it led him to become exactly the kind of musician the world needs more of. She turned back to Kevin. Kevin, you've spent 4 years thinking you were just a subway busker, but what you actually were was a pioneer. You were creating a new model for what classical music can be: accessible, responsive, healing. Ellen had one more surprise that would show Kevin the true scope of his impact. Kevin, I want you to see something. A large screen descended from the ceiling, and on it appeared a montage of videos that Ellen's team had somehow gathered in the past hour. They were phone recordings from subway passengers who had encountered Kevin over the years. The first video showed Kevin playing at Union Station while a young mother tried to calm a crying baby. As his gentle melody filled the station, the baby stopped crying and began to reach toward the music. The second video captured Kevin at Hollywood and Vine, playing what appeared to be a conversation between his violin and a group of children who were clapping along. Their faces were pure joy. The third video was more recent, Kevin playing at downtown station while a group of homeless individuals gathered around him, not for money but simply to listen to something beautiful. Kevin, Ellen said as the videos played, these people didn't just hear your music. They felt seen, understood, cared for. You weren't just playing violin in a subway station. You were providing therapy, community, hope. Kevin watched the videos with tears streaming down his face. I remember each of these moments, but I had no idea anyone was recording them. Kevin, these videos have been shared thousands of times. You've become a symbol of how art can heal, how music can bridge differences, how one person with talent and compassion can make a difference in countless lives. Ellen stood up and made one final statement that would encapsulate everything Kevin's story represented. Kevin Martinez came to our show today as someone who plays violin in subway stations. But what we've discovered is that he's actually a revolutionary. He's revolutionized what it means to be a classical musician, what it means to serve your community, and what it means to turn personal challenges into opportunities to help others. She turned to Kevin one more time. Kevin, you thought the accident ended your dreams, but what it actually did was help you discover that your real dream wasn't to play for people who could afford concert tickets. Your real dream was to play for people who needed music the most. But Ellen had one final surprise that would cement Kevin's understanding of his true impact. Kevin, there's one more person who wants to meet you. From the audience stood a woman in her 30s, walking slowly toward the stage. She moved with visible emotion, tears already streaming down her face. Kevin, Ellen said as the woman approached, this is Sarah Chen. She was in our audience today, but she has a story to tell you. Sarah reached the stage and looked directly at Kevin. Kevin, 18 months ago I was standing on the platform at Union Station. I had just been diagnosed with cancer, lost my job, and was going through a divorce. I was in the darkest place of my life. Kevin listened intently as Sarah continued. I was waiting for the train, but I wasn't planning to get on it. I was planning to step in front of it. I had reached the point where I couldn't see any reason to keep living. The studio was completely silent. Then I heard violin music echoing through the station. It was this haunting, beautiful melody that seemed to speak directly to my pain. I followed the sound and found you, playing with your eyes closed, completely lost in the music. Sarah's voice broke slightly. I stood there for 45 minutes, just listening. The music you played went through every emotion I was feeling, the sadness, the anger, the fear, but then something else, hope. Gradually, the melodies became more uplifting, more determined. Kevin's eyes filled with tears as he realized what Sarah was telling him. Kevin, I didn't step in front of that train because of your music. I got on the train and went home instead. The next day I started cancer treatment. I fought for my life because your music reminded me that life could still be beautiful. Sarah reached into her purse and pulled out a small card. Today marks 18 months cancer-free. I carry this card with me everywhere. It has the date I heard you play and decided to live. Ellen wiped tears from her eyes. Sarah, Kevin saved your life with a violin in a subway station. More than that, Sarah said, turning to address the audience. Kevin's music didn't just save my life that day. It taught me that beauty and hope can appear anywhere, anytime, when you least expect it. I became a volunteer counselor for other cancer patients because of what Kevin showed me about the power of unexpected kindness. Kevin was speechless, overwhelmed by the realization that his subway performances had literal life and death impact he'd never imagined. Ellen addressed the studio audience. Kevin thought he was just playing music, but he was saving lives, proving art has power to reach people in their darkest moments. Maestro Chen stood up. This is why the LA Philharmonic needs Kevin. Classical music has lost touch with its purpose, to heal and connect. Kevin never lost sight of that. Ellen had one more revelation. Kevin, my team researched subway musicians worldwide. Your responsive, therapeutic approach doesn't exist anywhere else. She returned with papers. This UCLA study mentions an unnamed violinist in the LA metro system whose approach has shown measurable effects on commuter stress levels. Kevin stared at the document. They were studying me? You pioneered a new field of therapeutic music performance. Sarah added, Kevin, you looked at the people, not just played for them. Ellen nodded. Kevin turned street performance into public service. You've influenced research, inspired musicians, saved lives, and now you're reshaping how a premier orchestra thinks about community engagement. Kevin was overwhelmed. I just wanted to keep playing music. That's what makes it powerful, Ellen replied. You weren't trying to start a movement, but sometimes that's how important movements begin. Sarah stepped forward. 3 other cancer patients mentioned encountering a violinist in the subway who helped them choose to keep fighting. Maestro Chen added, Kevin's work is revolutionary. He's proven therapeutic music can happen anywhere when delivered by someone who understands human need. As the show wrapped up, Kevin played a short piece on his violin, the same gentle, hopeful melody he often played for stressed commuters. But this time he was playing it for a studio audience who understood they were hearing not just music, but a philosophy of service, a commitment to human connection, and proof that the most beautiful art often comes from the most unexpected places. 6 months later, Kevin Martinez was splitting his time between performing with the LA Philharmonic and continuing his subway concerts. The Music Where You Are program had expanded to include dozens of musicians who brought classical music to hospitals, shelters, senior centers, and other unexpected venues throughout Los Angeles. Kevin's subway performances had become so popular that the metro system officially designated certain times and locations for classical music performances, creating opportunities for other musicians to follow his model. The program he'd inspired was being studied and replicated in subway systems across the country, proving that Kevin's instinct that people need music in their everyday spaces was not just correct but revolutionary. And every morning when Kevin descended into Union Station with his violin, he carried with him the knowledge that he hadn't lost his dream of being a professional musician. He'd simply discovered that being professional didn't mean playing only in fancy concert halls. Sometimes it meant bringing beauty to the places where people needed it most, one melody at a time. Because Kevin had learned something that changed how he thought about both music and disability, that the most important performances aren't the ones people choose to attend, but the ones they encounter when they need them most. And sometimes the perfect concert hall isn't a building with perfect acoustics, it's wherever someone is hurting and needs to be reminded that beauty still exists in the world.